Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. Oh, and it's so annoying when 5 actors suddenly appear on stage there and genuinely provide excellent performances. James Garner's charisma was legendary, charm, and amiability. However, it remained a secret from him for a long time. On Charles Bronson, his thoughts. For many years nobody knew for sure. How did these two actually interact with each other? Famous actors and actresses from Hollywood? Come dive with us, regarding the startling admission that at last unveils the truth about James Garner, pondered the role of Charles Bronson. Hey, James Garner's formative years. Garner James, who so many people have seen it on screen display cases such as the Rockford Files, and James Scott Bumgar is the birth name of Maverick. In the year 1928, in the city of Norman, Oklahoma. While he was a kid, life was never perfect. Throughout the difficult times, his own experiences had a formative influence on his subsequent, powerful, sincere characteristics performed visually. At the age of 5, James, just a young man, he had to confront one of the most possible tragedies that a kid might face, including through his mother, Mildred Bumner. Dropping out, the void she created at such a tender age is immense within his soul. Weldon, his dad, dealing with the loss was difficult for Bumner and being responsible for James's upbringing, and Jack, one of his older brothers, and Charles was all alone. In due time, the boy's new wife is Weldon's second marriage, a vicious stepmother. James in due course accused her of being violent, psychologically and physiologically. Never in his life forgot about the tough times he had with her. The use of his hands accelerated his maturation, better than the majority of his age group. In his later years, the adolescent years, James finally snapped. It was decided to strike out on his own in the entire planet. Difficulty was high. It was a motley crew of odd occupations just to get by. The whole gamut, from operating gas pumps to amidst an oil pit. Things were tough, but James kept trying. He was hell-bent on to achieve success in life. These struggles he encountered in the beginning years of experience enabled him to persevere throughout challenging times. He gained a resoluteness that would thereafter manifest engrossed in a number of his roles. With the end of WE2 in sight, as a merchant marine, James enlisted, while he was not yet a teenager, and this job required me to travel extensively across the water transporting goods. Upon completion of In the Conflict, he swung about a bit, attempting work at various jobs throughout college, but felt like it was a perfect fit for him. Following that, once the Korean War erupted and there turning to the call in the early 1950s, James serving one's country. Joining the United States Army was his decision, as well as having served in the 5th Regimental Army unit. During Garner's military service was a real challenge. He beheld authentic battle and confronted genuine threats. In fact, he suffered 2 wounds during fighting and won 2 Purple Hearts for his sacrifices in the wounds, an unusual distinction that demonstrated only his level of selflessness. An accident arrived on his face and hands from fragments of debris, and still another occurred when he was struck by U.S. aircraft-caused friendly fire. Regardless of notwithstanding the agony and risk, James persisted strong. While in Korea, he had a significant effect on his life. It sparked a profound comprehension of courage, allegiance, and perseverance. These genuine James Garner was transformed by his experiences from a plethora of additional performers once he thereafter arrived at Hollywood. The need for him to put on an act of toughness. Tough guy. It is you could tell from the way he walked individually, his speech pattern, and the manner to other people. He could have been portraying the role of a witty cowboy and swashbuckling private investigator or renegade in the fictional Rockford Files completed the task. His audience had faith in him as he wasn't acting. Upon his through it all. The childhood hardships of James Garner combat, hardship, cruelty, and loss paved the way for a guy to might emerge as a top performer in the future, widely admired and cherished performers in the City of Angels. The subtle power and humble character enabled him to ordinary individuals can relate to, and that's enduring widespread acclaim for several decades. People may look to him and hold fast to both in and out of the spotlight, and right when it looked like things were going to continue to hand him difficult situations, an unexpected turn of events propelled James Garner on becoming a famous person. How about we discuss his very accidental foray into acting unexpected event? From trailblazer to legend, James becoming an actor was never Garner's original plan. His transition into the entertainment industry actually nearly happened by chance. Upon his return, while his time in the Korean War, he attempted to secure a job. He was advised by a buddy to James dabbled in modeling for a period, precisely that. He did swimsuit modeling and different garments, making a modest income, though I was never truly at ease while being filmed. Simulation failed to make sense to him. At the time of this, the moment a talent scout noticed him official, who believed James was entitled to appearance and demeanor during performing. To begin with, on this matter, James was uncertain. Being an actor was uncharted territory, and he was short one education or work history. Yet he made up his mind to test the waters. To begin with, his job while gaining experience and knowledge in a supporting role, and even put some time watching shows put on by the sidelines, learning from those with more expertise performing artists. Gradually, he started dominor roles in television series and motion pictures. A combination of his innate charisma and captivated the audience with his genuine charisma, casting directors' focus and viewers and listeners equally. James Garner's extensive success arrived in 1957 when he secured the television series as Brett Maverick franchise Maverick. The nature of this position shifted everything on his behalf when compared to more Western programs airing on television during time. Stoic and solemn, the majority of cowboys without fail, they promptly accessed their guns. Contrarily, Brett Maverick stood out. He was lovely to look at, very perceptive, and instead resort to violence to resolve issues. The performance by Garner introduced a fresh hero to Theon TV, someone who depended on humor, with a lightning, fast mind. People really enjoyed it. James Garner's laid-back manner, friendly grin, and impeccable timing enabled Brett Maverick as among the best-known televised personalities. Not even close pretended to be stern. I could relate to him and his humanity, which enabled him to stand remove it. The 1957-1962 season of Maverick helped bring Garner fame. Following that, entering the television industry, Garner eased into the film industry. A friend of his was a key player in the film The 1944 war film Escape, which follows the Allied inmates preparing for a daring desert run from an internment camp. Collaborating with major celebrity names such as Steve McQueen, Garner wasted his own, displaying an ingenious and endearing individual dubbed the scanning device. It was clear from his performance that he might be equally at home in a cinematic setting, simply like watching television. Additional box office hits that came after. With the globalization of Julie Taymor co-starred with Emily Garner, Andrews through an amusing and reflective narrative, matters of heart, religion, and morality. Skeptics lauded his efforts, stating that added nuance and warmth to his part. The other hand, in the humorous romance comedy starring Garner, Doris Day shown his innate comic skills and timing. He later appears in Murphy's Romance, portrayed the role of a loving widower on the other side field, Sally. He was rewarded for his performance, an Oscar contender for Best Performer, demonstrating once more that his genius was everlasting. Throughout the 70s, James Garner got back on the small screen and developed a role that would become iconic for him, private investigator Jim Rockford using Rockford Records. Every single thing about this show altered public perception of private investigators in television. As opposed to playing the tough man role, armed with steel fists, Rockford was an ordinary male, articulate, humorous, and occasionally bad luck. Adopting a nomadic lifestyle, Demeanor matters, and frequently discovered himself in challenging circumstances. Depiction by Garner authenticated Jim Rockford's experience, and people immediately related to him. A major factor that led to James Garner was a huge hit thanks to his distinctive acting style. He was more than just a character for them, he became. His charisma affected others' love him at first sight. The use of his wits was sufficient to lighten the mood and add more human being. First and foremost, he demonstrated genuineness of spirit. When he was individuals were filled with fear, joy, sadness, or angry, the situation seemed genuine since James. This is based on Garner's own life personal history. He displayed a natural and unforced demeanor, overly difficult. He had complete faith in his gut feelings and that organic look that became famous for many years to come. But the irrepressible charisma that lies behind were difficult fights as well. Here we will proceed by examine James's challenges externally and his struggle for what was on the Hollywood BLVD. In the case of James Garner versus Charles Bronson is the guy. Garner, James, and meeting for the first time on the set of All Out Break in 1962. They were both in while establishing prosperous professions, but they were completely distinct types of people. They were completely incompatible, been more diametrically opposed. James Garner Jr. had a reputation for being kind and laid back, amusing and humorous. He desired to maintain, during filming, keep things lighthearted, and make everyone on set feel at ease. On the other hand, Charles Bronson kept to himself, personal and intense. I didn't engage in lengthy conversations until absolutely need to do so, and was more comfortable being alone. To begin with, approaching Bronson, Garner attempted to use as always. He was welcoming. He had faith in getting everyone to relax and enjoy themselves on site. Having said that, Bronson had zero interest in conversation or informal friendships. James Garner quickly grasped the gravity of Bronson's statement. The seemingly cold demeanor wasn't a facade. That was simply his character. Because of this, and straightaway feeling of discomfort between the duo of guys. To Garner's dismay, Bronson initially, although he undeniably experienced suffering, the stress. Right once, it became apparent that it was clear that they would not become fast friends. On set, both performers were experienced individuals who were proficient in their jobs. They play pivotal roles in the great. It turned out that escape and on-display device, played by Garner, was Hendley, the hunter, who might be able to get whatever is required for the escape strategy. The Tunnel King Danny, played by Bronson, whose job it was to dig the underground passages. Cooperation was necessary for their scenes, with no hiccups whatsoever for the target demographic. They demonstrated on camera working together and even developing a relationship. However, in the background, the employees' bond was considerably more enjoyable. James Garner later came forward about his feelings not at ease in Bronson's company. Not at all. Bronson was quiet, that was all. The experience Wash's demeanor might be somewhat aggressive at times. Bronson was serious and couldn't be bothered to backstory in between takes. He avoided socializing, alongside the remaining actors in the identical same manner that the majority of performers did. Garner uncovered it as a hard time relating to someone who emanated such a reserved and occasionally negative force. Despite the fact that Bronson did a good job, yet tensions were an issue that Garner just couldn't disregard. The problem became increasingly apparent as production continued. Garner began to experience he seemed unrespected by Bronson, and perhaps even disliked him, when Garner was one who placed a premium on candor and transparency. The walls that Bronson appeared to construct within himself, Garner's growing unease within Bronson. It was allowed to have no impact on his performance, however, the burden on the connection experienced. Yet despite the fact that they maintained an air of professionalism, implicit comprehension between the two of them. All they were was co-workers, not my friends. Garner went on to characterize Bronson someone who is hostile and resentful, complicated our ability to work together. They avoided physical altercations. During filming The Great Escape, a subtle yet noticeable air of unease caused the unpleasant ordeal for Garner. This initial conflict is just the beginning, the first step toward a far more intricate and difficult dynamic between performing artists. Their dissimilarities, which initially was made apparent throughout The Great Escape, would eventually burst into open animosity concerning which Garner would subsequently discuss a long time later. Plus, as you'll notice, following that, a single highly charged poker match would strain Garner's tolerance for Bronson to reach their limit and decide to alter their lasting bond. The memoir, a revelation. After a long time, James Garner chose to remain silent regarding his actual strong emotions for a number of his co-stars. It was maintained a polished demeanor and refused to creating a public spectacle. However, upon his return, launched his autobiography, The Garner Files. In 2011, he made the decision that the time had come to be forthright. Furthermore, regarding Without Charles Bronson and Garner, once again, Chapter 1 of The Garner Files straightforwardly stated, Charles Bronson was a discomfort with the asterisk, A. It was an unusually candid moment, demonstrating the enormity of Garner's long. After the fact, the sentiments remained. It wasn't shy about saying it. Garner continued by claim that he used and harmed others. Of those, few phrased it so plainly that their issues and location for The Great Escape were significantly greater than only a disagreement in character. The reason Bronson wasn't, according to Garner, just an unassuming, solemn man. According to him, Bronson was cruel to others. Considering that from Garner's perspective, Bronson would exploitate other people when he was able to, and didn't appear to be quite understanding and compassionate towards in his immediate vicinity. Such actions proceeded contrary to all that Garner had ever stood for. Garner has a reputation for treating everybody, treating them with dignity, regardless of how large celebrity or an aspiring young extra. Honesty and justice were principles he followed while filming and in real life. Just one specific anecdote from Garner's autobiography revealed the true severity of the situation, prevented him from reaching Bronson. James Garner recounted an event that transpired while taking place during filming of The Great Get Out. Back then, a deck of card scene transitions were frequent and useful. Take a break. At some point throughout while, a youthful actor was rehearsing and went on to win a sum of money from brothers Bronson. However, payment was due. Bronson would not relinquish the young repay the man his debt. It wasn't Garner's the kind of person who could observe an unjust occurred while remaining silent. He intervened without sugarcoating it, informed Bronson that he had to pay the additional amount he owed. In Garner's view, it didn't matter. Regardless of how minor their part was, they were due receive kind treatment. In his view, it was regarding fundamental morality, but Bronson did not handle the conflict gracefully. As per Garner's account, following that debate, Bronson circulated the room delivering all the people he would never collaborate with back to James Garner, resulting from, "I thought that poker game was the last straw, feelings that bind them forever." From thereafter, it became impossible to conceal the fact that they were hostile toward one another. When it was all said and done, Garner wasn't mad that he had Bronson's dislike. He actually did said that, "Over my life, there have a handful of men who were uninterested in me as a result of my candor. Oh no, I've never believed I spoke my mind. So I informed the truth." According to Garner, being forthright and taking a stand for justice was simply that he was. He may have gained a few dangers he would face. He had a chance to survive under consideration. What this narrative unveiled went beyond it's only a quarrel between two well-known actors. It highlighted the substantial variation in how the world as they saw it. Garner placed a high importance on kindness, justice, and doing what is right item, regardless of how uneasy it could have been. Bronson, according to what Garner said, felt to place a greater emphasis on tenacity and achieving his goals, regardless of the cost treading on people's toes. They weren't fighting all about individual variances in personality. It the subject of two distinct types of individuals who end up on the identical team. One man's refusal to stay was the central theme, unbeautiful sight of someone being abused, whoever was responsible. The shadow side of Bronson. This is the work of James Garner. Unpleasant encounters with Charles Bronson wasn't unusual. Interestingly, Bronson having a background of relationships that were difficult in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a highly discussed regarding events involving a different co-star his breakout role in The Great Escape, David Mr. McCallum. As a team, we worked on the supposedly, Bronson created a passionate attachment to McCallum's wife, entertainer Jill Ireland. If one believes from a number of sources, Bronson once directly informed McCallum, "I intend to wed your spouse." It was an astonishing statement to make, particularly in light of the fact that McCallum, and during that period, Ireland was still married. Several individuals involved in the production were shocked by how daring Bronson was. For what events that followed exacerbated the problem more complexity. In David McCallum and Jill Ireland that year divorced following over a decade of marriage. That year, 1968, Charles Bronson became Jill Ireland's husband. After she passed away and their marriage lasted till the year 1990. Despite the fact that knowing each and every one of the details surrounding behind closed doors, the schedule brought up a lot on the West Coast. As a result, it increased the image of Bronson as a macho actor, honest and not too worried about what other people thought of his behavior. David, in spite of the embarrassing circumstance, later on, McCallum shown a great deal of poise. Years down the road, McCallum was interviewed and regarding everything with exceptional calmness. "I have absolutely no idea," he declared. Understanding that when questioned about Bronson allegedly made a statement regarding joining his wife in matrimony, McCallum also managed to evident that he had no ill will. In "I never hated" was his statement in the interview. He had. The friendship with Charlie was unwavering. McCallum clarified that in certain consequently, he favored handling them peacefully rather than lugging around fury level. He contributed to the success of downplay a portion of the controversy around the situation. However, regardless of McCallum making a positive impression, Bronson's character and things were starting to look up in the business world. Among Hollywood's elite, Bronson was known as an elusive and unapproachable individual. While filming, cold and quiet were common descriptors of him. Far and unreachable. But other celebs passionate in interacting with followers and constructing connections with their colleagues, Bronson avoided eye contact. Several performers and he was reportedly discovered by the team. Frightening, while other people just establishing a rapport with him was challenging. A component of the aloof demeanor of Bronson could have resulted from his difficult childhood. Grew up in a coal mining family, Bronson endured a challenging childhood, way back when he was just starting out. That challenging upbringing molded him into the individual he is today and evolved into. Powerful, quietly spoken, and rarely sealed off. Ignoring the fact that understood and shared his challenging background, his treatment of others caused them difficulty in his immediate vicinity. When considering James' fairness was important to Garner, civility, candor, and dealing with someone of Bronson's caliber was particularly frustrating. The sight of Garner, he showed no fear when people mistreated him, to acknowledge its occurrence. Wow, that's why, in his book written years later, whatever Garner said, he stood by it. Taking stock based on his past work, Garner just stated, "I simply informed the truth." The struggle that Garner had with Hollywood. Hey, James Garner possessed more than simply acting chops. It was possessed profound moral principles and integrity. Garner has consistently, repeatedly demonstrated his concern concerning being fair, being honest, and doing what was right, even when it was difficult. Just one as an illustration of Garner's taking a stand for his beliefs was the well-known case he took on Warner My Brothers. In the latter half of the 1950s, Garner actor Brett Maverick was playing the lead role in infamous television series Maverick. There was a popular, and Garner's portrayal of the lead role was crucial to its success. However, despite appearances to the contrary, I understand. It was not Warner Brothers fairly, Garner. It was being Putis' allegation that he is on paid suspension. Unfortunately, he was unemployed. They continued airing reruns of Maverick and profiting from his creations. This was obviously erroneous, and Garner was aware of it. Choose to resist. He submitted his first paperwork in 1960, taking legal action by suing Warner Brothers for break in the agreement. Although it hardly ever does an actor step on a large studio set, there were plenty of authority. Nevertheless, the majority of performers were frightened to act in order to bravely confront those people, yet Garner was uninterested in being treated poorly. He had the view that performers are deserving of respect and fairness. Garner ultimately prevailed and case, demonstrating a significant precedent to other people working in the field. He achieved. It demonstrated that challenging unjust therapy could be implemented even in a Hollywood, a notoriously difficult industry. Still another distinguishing feature of James Garner turned down the Hollywood BS. It did not appreciate the glamour as well as the phony grins that came with enjoying stardom. Garner has a reputation for being real. Off-screen, he remained unchanged. Sincere, while he was on-screen, simplicity and directness. It didn't want to put on an act like imposter for the sake of gaining favor or climb the corporate ladder. He was highly esteemed. Being genuine is of utmost importance, and individuals admired him because of it. A family from Hollywoodmen. Even though James Garner was well known, every time he was on screen, he was crystal clear. To play the one that was important to his career, while he was a spouse, he played at home, and one who is a father. But unlike a lot of A-listers whom, in their individual lives, had tragedy, Garner's narrative was at devotion, affection, and dedication. Back in 1956, Lois Clark was the woman Garner met at a partisan gathering. It felt about a scene from a film. In only a fortnight subsequently, they tied the knot. When many were taken aback by the sudden romance, nonetheless, it was discovered to be among the most enduring and cherished unions in the City of Angels. They were wed for 58 years, decades, all the way up until Garner's passing in year 2014. Not only did James Garner pledge to hello Lois, in addition, he gave his all to the job of father. Just before he wed Lois, Kimberly, their small daughter, was already there, through a prior union. The Garner name was never cared for Kimberly, as if she were a child of his own. His devotion for her was unwavering, cared for her like a daughter. Afterwards, Lois and James had yet another child, Greta She Garner, who they had together. A loving father to both of his children, Garner young women. Despite the fact that across his acting career, he always prioritized his loved ones. He liked low-key pursuits activities such as playing games with his daughters, assisting with academic assignments, and spend time in nature. Relatives and friends frequently claimed that Garner's preferred location was at home with his family, in a far place from with their whirring shutters and bustling sets. It was passed on valuable lessons to his little ones, fostering compassion, virtue, honesty, and equity. As they grew up, Garner hoped his girls would realizing that decency was more important over notoriety and wealth. The way he demonstrated it was by being truthful in all aspects of one's life, diligence, deference to others. Something else that was notable regarding one aspect of Garner's family life that was very accessible, and that he was welcoming the concept. he welcomed into their blended family variety in his individual dwelling. According to him, the belief that love, rather than genetics, was the defining characteristic of a dedicated to our family. Given Garner's approval and with the assistance of heat, a house was surrounded by a sense of safety, love, and trust, a unique and uncommon thing in the world and the Hollywood set. Although I am now a famous actress, Garner maintained her modesty. It was once described himself as an ordinary guy from who was fortunate enough to be in Oklahoma wildlife love. To top it all off, he frequently highlighted, primarily resulted from possessing encouraging relatives who cherished him for. He was known for more than only his acting roles. It was clear from James Garner's upbringing that it was feasible to establish a long-term content at home, even as they engage in the focus. The union between him and Lois Clark, along with his commitment to she Kimberly, and had a significant impact on his decision to beyond being a superb actor. Really exceptional man. A personal narrative of overcoming adversity. Despite James Garner's well-being, in both personal and professional aspects of life, he encountered a great deal of personal difficulty. His serene and endearing demeanor aside portrayal, he had to cope with numerous stress, discomfort, and medical issues. But being himself, Garner dealt with it bravely and unflinchingly. Throughout the Garner and his colleagues in the 1970s and 1980s, Lois, the wife, endured some challenging multiple times, after some time apart, which caused them both agony. The star power caused significant strain on their marriage. A lot of the time Garner had to stay away from home. The pressures of Hollywood caused friction on occasion. Not at all effortlessly managing a Hollywood star's life involved in the role of a parent and spouse. But despite being apart for a while, Garner and Lois continued to support each other. They eventually retraced their steps, demonstrating yet again how powerful, what a true bond they had. Among the most important of strain throughout that time was The Rockford Files, which Garner worked on. The hit television show, but it was accompanied by a personal cost to him, was substantial. James Garner performed numerous stunts on his own since aimed for realism in the show by could be feasible. As time went on, this led to major hurt his body physically. He went through a lot due to aches and pains in the back, knees, and other issues that permeated daily living difficult. Subsequently, he stated that making as if I were in the middle of a collision occurs weekly. But he persisted, continuing on, intent on offering his top performance, regardless of the cause harm. After a while, the physical strain reached his level. Garner created intense rheumatism, leading to ongoing body aches throughout. His pace has to be reduced, but he continued to work even after that in full detail. Following a cardiac attack, in 1988, surgery following the discovery of complications for whom immediate medical attention was essential, we had a big procedure, which necessitated that Garner undergo a much-needed vacation and devote some time to his health for a time. Much later, in 2008, he encountered new and significant obstacle when he was struck with a heart attack. It was widely believed that it would be finally leaving the limelight, although once more, Garner displayed his combat skills spirit. Effortlessly, he got better and get to savor a couple more delicious spending time with his loved ones. Despite his absence, mostly ignored by the general population following the heart attack, he stayed by Lois's side, with an emphasis on individuals, Kimberly and Zito, whom it was most important. James Garner Jr. died away at home without pain or suffering. Inhaled in Hollywood on July 19, 2014, at 86 years of age. The reason behind it was stated as a cardiac arrest. The loss of his life was felt by worldwide admirers who adored him, relaxed manner, forthright personalities, and his uncanny knack for appearing to be a genuine, easy to connect with both on and off screen. If you found this video entertaining, remember for additional content, to like, comment, and subscribe. Fascinating glimpses into life of legendary figures.